We are back week 2, ranking running backs and wide receivers into our tier list. Everyone's hurt. So there's going to be a couple guys on here that they're probably not even going to play. I think only one or two, because I think I anticipated everyone else not playing this week. We're going to start wide receivers this time. We're going to go through the tier list. Just a heads up, we do tier lists a little bit differently, not just tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, but kind of group players together in terms of, the type of player they are, the situation they're in, all of that good stuff. So kind of just starting off right away. Already have tier list laid out here, so you don't have to watch me drag the pictures up there. But I have my number 1 overall wide receiver tier. These are just every week I'm going to choose 5 guys. These are the guys I'd put money on finishing as the number 1 wide receiver for the week. So last week, I'm just double checking, in half PPR, it was Jaden Reed. So not one of the guys I had, but it was Jaden Reed, Cooper Kupp, and Alan Lazard. That was the top 3. Go figure. And Jameson Williams is also in the top 5. Anyways, I have CeeDee Lamb, Cooper Kupp, AJ Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Garrett Wilson. We don't have to spend too much time here, Brian, but any disagreement there on you would remove someone and replace them with someone else?
No, I don't think so. I mean, they're all obvious number 1 guys. Like Garrett Wilson is definitely the one that scares me the most because the Jets offense looked good for one drive, basically. Mm-hmm. But we're hoping things get a little rolling over there, and like Cooper Kupp, definitely wide receiver number 1 overall this week.
22 targets he had, or 21, whatever it was.
So ridiculous.
Just Stafford is insane. No wonder he has 2 of the greatest. He's the quarterback of 2 of the greatest receiving seasons ever in Megatron and Cooper Kupp. Puka last year coming out the gate with 20 targets or whatever he had. I mean, my logic behind the Jets this week is week 1 for me was kind of like their preseason, get their legs under them. They didn't play together in the preseason, so get up to game speed, all that good stuff. And I think if the Jets are going to be who we think they are and why we drafted both Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson in the first round, this is the game where they're going to show it. If they don't, I'm a little bit worried. Not that I don't think Tennessee's defense is – I think it's good, but this has to be the game. We need to see something. So next up, I have the no-brainer tier. Didn't change that tier. These are basically all the guys you drafted as starters, and either they had good games – they didn't do enough to make you afraid, like Devontae Adams, I think had 5 for 60 or something like that. It's you're going to get some of those games. Every wide receiver is going to have some of those games. And if that's the floor, that's totally fine. And there's a couple other in here. So the tier is, Justin Jefferson, Mike Evans, Debo, Jamar Chase, Nico Collins, Rashee Rice, who we didn't rank last week because he played on Thursday night. By the way, this doesn't include any of the Thursday night guys. Brandon Ayuk, DJ Moore, Devontae Smith, I moved up into this tier. Malik Neighbors, I still have. He still had a solid game. Again, he had, I think, 5-6 catches and 50-60 yards. And then Devontae Adams. Really the only guy I think that didn't produce too much was Brandon Ayuk. But I think that was kind of it was his first week, really. He got into training camp late. And DJ Moore only had 5 for 40, but I think that's going to improve with the injuries, especially. So,
yeah,
again, don't need too much time.
Half the team's receiving yards.
It was, yeah. I think Caleb threw for less than 100, right? So,
yeah.
Plus Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze's not going to play. Keenan Allen might not play. So, any disagreements here? Again, these are obvious starts in my opinion, but anything we need to touch on or afraid of?
Well, no, definitely not afraid, but I think Debo, especially if CMC misses, I think he belongs in that. He could be wide receiver 1 pretty easy, given the target share and the carries. He's going to get some. He's going to get some work, that's for sure. And and like he's perfectly slotted right here if CMC does play.
Yep. Yeah, he's going to have 8 carries is what he had last week. So that's pretty insane on top of 9 targets. So,
and honestly, Neighbors is another one that kind of makes me a little nervous just because Daniel Jones looked so bad.
Yeah.
He looked like Daniel Jones. So
yeah,
I guess maybe we should have expected that a little bit.
Yeah. That being said, he still had 5 for 66. I was going to put him in the next tier, and then I double checked what he had. I was like, oh, okay, he had 5 for 66. Like, if that's like a bad game or Daniel Jones looked, like you said, absolutely terrible, I'll take it. And a lot of it has to do with he's playing the Commanders as well. And that's like, what's the stat in CBS? They always talk about like 20 straight games of either 70 yards or a touchdown to like a number 1 receiver or something. So, they're just like, they're pretty bad. And they showed it last week against the Bucs. So, next up, these are guys I'm still going to start, but I just want to touch on, like, are we worried about week 1 tier? Worried about week 1? All these guys they all busted. Marvin Harrison Jr. busted. DK Metcalf got shut down by Patrick Surtain. And he had 3 for 29. Obviously, London and Olave did not do anything. Any worry about these to where you're thinking about benching these guys, or are you still just starting them? Because all these guys were, Olave, London, and Marvin Harrison were all 2nd round, maybe early 3rd round picks, and Metcalf was not too far after that, 3rd or 4th round maybe. So, any worry with these guys that you might bench them, or still rolling with them, and you're going to give it a couple more weeks? And McCaffrey is ruled out.
Oh, well.
So Debo to the moon.
Yeah, there you go. Move them up. I definitely think don't worry about week 1, but also don't forget about it. I think Olave is the safest on this team or on this set, just because he's got a rapport in general with his quarterback. Like, that's what kind of sets him apart from London. Metcalf is, he's kind of like, he needs those like big plays, which he's really great at, or a touchdown to make you like really like forget about everything else that happens. But I'm not super worried about any of these guys. Like, definitely kind of give it another week and see how it goes from there. It's going to be hard to move off of them. They might move down to like wide receiver 3s, like if you're trying to choose between them and a few of these other guys. But like, I think not a ton of like completely shocking things, except for the Olave involvement. Basically, Saints score 47 points and he's not involved really. So that was definitely a strange one. I think that one has the most likeliness to bounce back.
I kind of agree, and everyone I've heard has that same thought process with Olave, and whereas I'm a little bit more towards like, I'm a little bit more worried than everyone else. It's like, because it's not like we've seen Olave be that dominant, deserving of a mid-2nd round pick in fantasy type of receiver. We're projecting that for this year. He's been good, but he's been a mid to low end wide receiver 2 his first 2 years. And then we get this where they literally come out and score 47 points, and he does 2 targets for 2 catches and 11 yards. I know the Saints and Carr didn't really throw much in general, but like, he did nothing, like literally nothing. I don't know. I was a little bit more worried than other people, but still going to start him for now. But it's on my radar. I am worried about Metcalf this week because he's probably going to get shut down again by Christian Gonzalez of the Patriots, who's another big physical receiver, and Metcalf cornerback, and Metcalf struggles with those type of cornerbacks. So a little bit worried there. I wouldn't be surprised if we see another kind of dud game from Metcalf, and then I'm buying low on him after that. So no, I like that, and I do agree with what you were saying about Olave. Like, it was kind of, I didn't really agree where he was being drafted necessarily. Definitely like better in PPR. I think he's going to bounce back a little more in terms of target share anyways, like he's going to get more than 2 targets. Like, that's kind of
what I was saying. Like he's going to be involved. Like, and I wouldn't necessarily put him as like a high end number 2 receiver, like where he was drafted. Like I was kind of looking at him more as like a, maybe top 18 receiver kind of a thing, like kind of mid-ish wide receiver too.
Yeah. Next here we had something similar to this last week, kind of really hard to sit these guys, but it could be prepared to be sad. Michael Pittman's on there. He only had 4 for 31, but that was half of Anthony Richardson's completions and a good portion of his passing yards. And it was, I think he only threw the ball 19 times. 19 times, and Pittman had 8 targets. So, Richardson had 212 yards, so not half of the receiving yards, but half of the targets and reception. So that's going to happen, I think, with guys like Pittman. But if he just throws it a little bit more, you're going to get kind of a bigger game. And then Jaden Reed obviously was, wide receiver 1. How do you sit that? But he has Malik Willis as his quarterback. So anything you want to touch on there? And are you benching either one of these guys?
I'm definitely more. Yeah, I mean, they're definitely like kind of in the same category for different reasons, right? Like, yeah, like Pittman, obviously, like the target share is great, but out of 19 targets, like there's not a whole lot going on. Like he's not like a catch and run guy. He's not like the end zone guy or anything like that. They've got Taylor basically and Richardson himself to kind of take care of that once they start shrinking the field. So a little concerned about Pittman, but I don't think you're sitting him, like maybe in 3 receiver leagues, like especially if it's only half PPR or something, like you're definitely more concerned. But he kind of reminds me of Allen Robinson, like back on the Bears and stuff, or even like Deontay Johnson, where it's like do these guys have like what are they doing like with like all the volume they get, kind of similar to what we were talking about with Chris Olave too. Like we need to see a little more. You can't just catch it and fall down essentially.
Yeah. No, I agree there. It is a little bit concerning with Pittman because if Anthony Richardson, if he's not going to get the deep targets, Pittman, and Richardson's wildly inaccurate on short area targets, that spells like, and he's going to steal goal line stuff. It's going to be JT or Anthony Richardson. So, McCaffrey's on the IR.
Is he really?
So, yeah.
Trade Jordan Mason if you're not competing now.
Yeah. But yeah, that's concerning with Pittman. So it'll be another week and we'll kind of reevaluate that. Next one's high floor, high ceiling. Struggled with a couple of these. I mean, we saw Godwin. This is what we were expecting. We were in on Godwin this year, moving back to the slot. And then we saw, we saw the 8 for 8. That was the big thing with Godwin. His catch percentage dropped to like low 60s when it was always in the mid 70s. He caught all of his passes for 83 yards and a touchdown. I think you're just going to get a solid high floor, potential high ceiling with him. Amari Cooper, I still put in that list, even though he had a bad game, but Deshaun Watson is just terrible. So maybe we'll have to reevaluate this one, but still 9 targets, only caught 2 passes. That's pathetic. And that's all on Watson. George Pickens, I put in here just because, again, he got the target volume. There's no one else there. He got 7 targets. I think Justin Fields, if I remember correctly, did not throw it. 23 times. So he got 7 of 23 there. And he had a good game. And then Zay Flowers, I really struggled with, but how they used him in week 1, if they're going to give him those predetermined touches, those manufactured touches where they know they're getting the ball in his hands, on top of, he's getting 10 targets, 2 rushes. I think he's going to have a pretty solid floor, in my opinion. Even 6 for 37 plus his 14 rushing yards gives him a nice floor with the upside of him, catching a couple touchdowns. So any of those I definitely struggled with Flowers the most, but do you think that's a fair for all these guys to kind of be in this tier.
Did you freeze? Sorry, you froze for a second. But yeah, no, I'm kind of curious. I think this category is it's pretty good. Zay Flowers definitely, and Pickens, well, and Cooper, honestly, like they kind of all they're all in that same sort of category as far as like the number one guys on their teams. But what does that offense, or more specifically, what is the passing offense for Zay Flowers? What does that really look like? I guess that kind of goes for Cooper. Well, I guess that kind of goes for all three of these guys, like kind of run heavy teams in general, and not a lot of faith in like the passing game necessarily. Like Godwin's the one that kind of stands out as like a little different. Like I'm glad he did return to form a little bit playing in the slot. And I think if that happens again, like if we see another game of it, it's like, oh, like I think we kind of nailed it. And I think he kind of moves up
probably
closer to that no-brainer category. Maybe not quite there after 2 weeks, but I'm actually struggling like whether or not to start him, but it's mostly because of who I have instead of him.
Yeah, it was tough with Flowers and Pickens. But these guys were showing they're getting 25, 30% of the target share. So if you're going to get that most often, you're going to have a pretty high floor. So versus these other guys, which, is a high floor, but low ceiling. And, Xavier Worthy is like the poster boy for that. Like, what do you have? Three or four touches, and he scored 2 touchdowns with them. Yeah. Three targets, 2 catches, 1 carry. He had 2 touchdowns and 70 yards almost. So that's like the epitome of a high floor, low ceiling. Like he's not going to do that every week, but obviously that could change. Tank Dell is in this list. Again, only 7 targets, and he's getting deep targets as well. His ADOT was pretty high this week. I think it was over 14, 15. So that's going to be, if you're only getting 7 targets and a high ADOT, you're going to be kind of this high floor, low ceiling. I meant high ceiling, low floor. I put the opposite there. Terry McLaurin, rookie quarterback. I do think he bounces back this week, but we see, when they decide to just run the ball a lot and Jaden Daniels decides to take off, that's going to happen. Then Jameson Williams is an interesting one because he had a bunch of targets, which I struggled with putting him here because I just said it with the previous guys. If you're getting 9 targets, you're not going to generally have a low floor. But I'm a little bit concerned about, I want to see one more week before I move him up because I don't expect Amon-Ra St. Brown to only get 6 targets, and I don't expect Sam Laporta to only get 5. I expect those guys to be closer to 8+ than 5 and 6 respectively. So you can tell me where I'm wrong. Should I have Jameson lower? Should I have him higher? He does one more week of this and we're moving him up. So you can talk about whatever you find fit there.
No, I think that it's pretty accurate, like I don't know how high McLaurin's ceiling really is, just given in the past, like I think he's kind of always just been like a solid wide receiver 2. And now with the quarterback play, the way it looked in week 1, it's cause for concern for sure. So I think these other guys, their ceiling is just so much higher than McLaurin's, even though he is the number 1 on his team, which is kind of why he's different from these other guys. But I mean, I do think that, the other 3, Dell, Worthy, and Jameson, they all kind of like fit that category. Like the problem in Houston, obviously it's crowded there, but they've got Stroud throwing the ball, and I think Dell will get his, but I don't know if it's going to be easy to predict. And hopefully you drafted him to be your wide receiver 3, and he'll give you those spike weeks. Definitely Worthy makes me nervous, given, like you said, just the opportunities weren't necessarily there. But I mean, it's the dude's first game too, and from what I've heard, Casey's offense can be a little complicated. We see that on the field too. They do some wild shit, like where it's like, how did that work? Like
Mhm.
And a lot of that has to do with Reed, and obviously a lot of it has to do with Mahomes. So definitely scared to start him. I'd still say I'd like to wait one more week, and I think he's a good trade high candidate if you can, in dynasty and redraft.
Yeah. Next one here is the 3 wide receiver PPR league. Obviously 12 team leagues as well. I'm not saying you're necessarily automatically starting these guys in those leagues, but that's kind of the only leagues I'm thinking about these guys. It's Stephon Diggs, who did catch 2 touchdowns, but got to be careful with banking on that. Keenan Allen, who I think had like 11, 12 targets, just didn't have many catches and yards, obviously. Brian Thomas caught a touchdown. I think he's slowly taking over as the number 1 guy there. So think we're going to see a breakout here pretty soon. Brad McConkey led the Chargers in targets, had a pretty good game too because he caught a touchdown. 7 targets, 5 catches, 39 yards, and a touchdown. And then Tyler Lockett, all reliable. We all forgot about him, and dude just proves us wrong. So I specifically want to hear what you think about Thomas and McConkey here. Is it too soon to even start thinking about starting him in 3 wide receiver PPR leagues, or is it okay to have him here?
Well, I think McConkey specifically, like we were kind of drafting him that way, but into an unsure situation, with him being a rookie. But that's kind of what like the upside for him was. Obviously, like the offense didn't look like lights out or anything. Herbert had a pretty bad game, but like this is a different team. Like this is not it's all on Herbert's back. Like I think there still will be games like that, and he is their best shot to win. Like I don't think it's just all of a sudden going to become a game manager. But I mean they're playing the Raiders, and we just know those guys are terrible. No, I just had to like dig on them a little bit. But yeah, but I don't know. Like I think in PPR, like you can still start McConkey and feel pretty confident in it, like as your wide receiver 3, more likely like your flex. He didn't do a whole lot with his share or anything, but like it was kind of that week for the Chargers, and definitely, I mean, they're going to play Carolina this coming week, and that actually causes a little bit of concern because they're just terrible, so how much are they going to have to throw? So the Brian Thomas thing, it's definitely like, it's probably too soon, but I mean, the guy had a lot of preseason hype, like he's quick, and I didn't necessarily think he would necessarily like take over like right away. I think I said necessarily twice, and I almost said it a third time there. I still want to see another game or two, but like you don't want to necessarily be on the. God, I said it again. You don't want to be on the late train there. But starting this guy, that kind of leads into like the next category, which you can explain. But I was just gonna say, I don't think Christian Kirk is just all of a sudden like dust. He did have a drop touchdown. He had a couple of bad drops, actually. Kirk did, and I think he's going to be like very involved. Like I don't think Gabe Davis is all of a sudden like the main guy on the team. He played the most snaps and everything like that, and
that's the biggest thing is the usage. Like it's the usage. Like Christian Kirk's just not out there enough to warrant starting at this point. Like. And that's what the next tier is like. Welcome to the bench. These are guys that you potentially started last week that I'm not starting them this week. It's Christian Kirk. If you're only going to play 70% of the snaps, I need volume for Christian Kirk. That's why you draft him, because he's a volume guy, and he's not going to get volume if he's only out there 70% of the time. Calvin Ridley, hate the matchup against the Jets, benching him. Deontay Johnson, I need to see something from Bryce Young before I even start anyone in the Carolina passing game. Christian Watson, especially with Malik Willis as the starter. Josh Palmer, we labeled as like a safe floor, low upside guy, and he didn't give you a floor. So you're on the bench until you show me something. JSN, I need to see you have more than a couple targets before I'm starting you. And Hopkins, health reasons, and again, against the Jets. So don't want to spend too much time here just for the sake of time in general, because we do need to get to the running backs as well. But you said you kind of disagree with Christian Kirk.
Well, I just I don't disagree with the logic for sure. It'd be nice to see him more involved, and I don't mind benching him. Calvin Ridley's kind of along those same lines too, where it's like I don't think. I mean, you're definitely not dropping any of these guys yet. But yeah, like Ridley, like I'm not super afraid of the matchup, but then again, the Titans are not the 49ers, so I don't know how much you can draw from that. They got the sauce and on the Jets, and he's going to be all over Ridley, I'm sure. I'm not sure how much he shadows the number one receivers, but But
the problem is their other defensive backs are just as good. Well, Levis too, but their other defensive backs are really damn good. So they don't need to make him, trail someone or shadow. So the one to wait or one more week, Demarcus Robinson, just want to see if he truly is the guy. I don't mind starting him if you need it, but do kind of want to wait. Gabe Davis, he led the Jaguars in receiving yards, but I'm going to wait another week before I even think about it. Jerry Jeudy had a bunch of targets. Again, just Watson couldn't get him the ball. He caught a touchdown at least. Lazard caught 2 touchdowns. If that happens again, then we can talk about starting him. Greg Dortch might be a solid PPR play guy. Just want to see it one more time. And then Romeo Dobbs, I just want to wait until basically Jordan Love comes back. So
Dobbs is definitely scary in that sense. And we've seen Dortch be the PPR guy. I did like Jerry Jeudy's involvement this week. We've seen flashes from him, but I mean, geez, like just Watson looks so terrible. So I don't disagree with any of this stuff. Demarcus Robinson, I definitely want to see, like we've seen the history with Demarcus Robinson with Stafford when other guys miss, and he was actually not too bad. I mean, granted, Puka left halfway through the game anyways, but I was going to say he wasn't too bad last week. So, yeah, I think he could be a solid play. I don't really want to fall into the Gabe Davis trap again, but different reasons, like I feel like him and Davis and Lazard are going to be kind of tricky unless we see it for another week. Like you said, like wait one more week, like I think the Lazard thing is like a bit of a fabrication, but also, he was a great like pickup in best ball leagues in that last round, just given the history with Aaron Rodgers, even though his second touchdown came from Tyrod Taylor, but
boom bust guys. I mean, again, it's Rashid Shaheed, it's Brandon Cooks, and it's Alec Pierce. They're kind of touchdown or bust or big play or bust. Again, I don't want to spend really any time here. That's good. Maybe Cooks can develop into a little bit more. The other two guys, I think that's who they're going to be, but maybe with Shaheed as well. So you want to just move on to the next tier unless you really want to.
No, that's good. I don't believe in the Alec Pierce thing, especially when Josh Downs comes back, but we'll see. We'll see. That could be totally wrong.
This is my did you know tier. Just some things that maybe you didn't realize is Adonai Mitchell could have had 2 big touchdowns. It just got overthrown by Anthony Richardson, or else we'd be talking about him very differently this week. Wan'Dale Robinson had 12 targets. Daniel Jones targets, but damn, 12 targets is like kind of crazy. So these are all guys that maybe they become something because we kind of missed it. Maybe you potentially missed it because they didn't do anything really in the box score. So Xavier Legette led his team in targets and receptions. Intriguing for a rookie receiver. Ray McLeod. I didn't think I'd ever be talking about him, but he had 7 targets, 4 catches, and 52 yards.
He's on the Falcons, right?
Yeah, he's on the Falcons. He's the kind of return. He's kind of the return specialist, but with the Rondale Moore injury, he has kind of taken over that slot position as well. So he could be kind of like Greg Dortch with potential for a special teams touchdown. And then Jalen McMillan caught like an easy, I think it was a 40-yard touchdown. He dropped it. So he would have had 2 touchdowns on top of 40 more yards, and we'd be talking about him differently. So again, you don't really have to comment on these if you don't want to, but just some things I wanted to throw out there with, let's see what these guys do on top of what they could have done in week 1. So
sure. Did you want to talk about Sutton because you jumped over him?
Yeah, we're going to get to Sutton. The last one here is just like you're 1 week away from being cut. If you haven't been cut already, is Jacoby Myers, Quentin Johnston, and Romeo Dobbs. If they don't, Dontavian Wicks, not Romeo Dobbs. Too many Packers receivers. But if they don't do anything this week, I'm probably cutting if I haven't already. So, Cortland Sutton, I need help with because I don't know where to put him. He had 12 targets last week. Only caught 4 passes, 40 yards, rookie quarterback, tough matchup. Like, where does he belong on this tier? Does he belong in like boom bust? Does he belong in 3 wide receiver PPR leagues? What do you think?
Yeah, probably 3 wide receiver PPR, just given the target share and the obvious number 1 guy on the team. We're going to see a lot of checkdowns from the Broncos in general. So I think that's kind of where I wouldn't really call him boom bust because what's his boom? Like he catches a touchdown and gets 12 points, that's what it was last year. So yeah, I'd say 3 receiver PPR, but I mean, we could be easily talking about him in the did you know category as far as like he could like his name could be Wan'Dale Robinson, it's like it's like there you go. They're the same guy, at least we've seen it from Sutton before. Yeah. At least he commands a target share. Like he's just not I guess this isn't actually true. I was about to say it's not like he's the only guy on the team, but it kind of seems that way. So yeah, scary.
I think I might have cut out there for a bit, but can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. And then I had Curtis Samuel on here, but you can cut Curtis Samuel. He was going to go in that tier, and yeah, you could definitely cut him. So,
played, I guess.
Yeah, he just played. So, on to the running backs. We'll see. Let's get through this in a reasonable time. So, RB1 overall, it's Bijan, it's JT, it's Breece Hall, it's Saquon, and it is Kyren Williams. So, again, we don't really need to talk about these guys. I think last week it was Saquon as the RB1, so I think he can do it again. Any no-brainers that you think should be in that number 1 overall tier? We got Jahmyr Gibbs, Joe Mixon, Derrick Henry, Kenneth Walker. Sounds like he's not going to play. We'll get to that in just a second. Yeah. Alvin Kamara, Rashad White, ETN. I have Jordan Mason here. You can tell me if that's wrong or right. Isaiah Pacheco and James Conner. So I guess my 2 main questions is, should Jordan Mason be here? And is Zach Charbonnet in this list if he's the starter and Kenneth Walker's out?
Jordan Mason definitely belongs if CMC misses time, which sounds like he's definitely sounds pretty solid that he's not going to play this week and maybe even not for the next IR. Yeah, okay. When I looked that up as you were talking, and I saw he may go to IR, but I don't know. Maybe it just hasn't. I didn't look in the right spot. And I think basically Charbonnet slots right in here if Walker is not playing. We've seen some good things from him. We need involvement. We know he can catch the ball, and his coach said some really good things about him. Sorry, you said Mason, and who was the other one?
No, you're right. It was Charbonnet.
Okay. Yeah. So no, I think that's solid right there. Honestly, I think Josh Jacobs deserves to be in here too. Like, I get the situation. Like, I think they're gonna lean on him a little more. Like, Malik Willis scares everybody. It's like, I don't know. Ask one of the receivers if they used to play quarterback. Maybe they can do it. You got to Wildcat. Yeah, it's like Christian Watson. Did you ever throw before?
I think Charbonnet's going to get Kenneth Walker's workload. I just don't know if he's as good as Kenneth Walker. So it could be a little bit uglier of a stat line, like 20 carries for 80 yards instead of 100 yards and a couple catches. But I generally agree there.
He doesn't have that. Ken Walker, I think when we talked about him, it's like half his games he breaks off a 20-yard plus run.
Yeah.
last year. So I don't think Charbonnet has that in his game, but he might be better just overall. Like he doesn't necessarily try and hit those home runs all the time, or maybe he does try and we just don't see it. Like they're just different athletes. So I think he can make up for it in the passing game a little bit.
Yeah. And then the next tier, I'm starting these guys most likely, but it's again, just know they're in tough situations. Aaron Jones is going against the 49ers, and Josh Jacobs is, having Malik Willis as quarterback, and we'll see how they move the ball. So again, I'm not saying don't start these guys. I'm just saying wanted to highlight them in particular with like the kind of the tough situation there. So
sure.
Yeah. Well, we had this tier last time, the workhorse on a questionable offense. Don't think it's really changed. We kind of see like the range that you can get. You get Ramondre, who had an awesome game because they were in the positive game script for them. They were able to give him 25 carries and 3 catches, 120 yards and a touchdown. That's like in the realm of possibility for these guys. And then you kind of see the other side of Devin Singletary, where they're not in the positive game script. And so, yeah, he's the workhorse. Yeah, he's out there 70% of the snaps, but he only gets, 10 carries and 4 catches for 15 yards. So Najee, I have Jerome Ford in here, who we didn't have on this list before, but Browns use Jerome Ford 75% of the time. I'm a little bit skeptical if they're going to continue to do that because that's just not what they do. Even Nick Chubb in 2021 and 2022 had one game of 75% of the snaps, a prime Nick Chubb. So I'm a little bit skeptical if he is like the guy, but they showed it last week, so I'll put him in here for now. But anything you want to comment on these guys?
Yeah, I think Ford will continue to see that just given like who's behind him. Like Chubb at least had Kareem Hunt behind him. Like he had capable guys behind him to kind of like spell him a little bit, and Chubb would get tired breaking off those big runs. Like Ford isn't necessarily used in that same way. So I think that's totally fine. Definitely questionable offenses for all these guys, but they are kind of essentially the focal point for a lot of these offenses, maybe not Singletary.
Yeah. Yeah. If they're in a positive game script, though, they'll give him some run for sure. I have the 15 touch guys. Last week we had, the 15 touch with 1-2 catches, 15 touch, 2+ catches. If I did that, there was only going to be one in the 2+ catch tier. So I just combined these guys to 15 touches. It's Monty, who had his 15 touches almost exactly, I think. He had 18. So yeah, 15 plus is like 15 to 18. Don't really expect 20. Maybe every now and then you'll get it, but Brian Robinson's in there. And Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard had 19 touches with 3 catches. Brian Robinson was pretty good. I think he had 3 catches on top of 12. So he literally had 15 touches. I like all these guys. I'm probably going to start most of these guys as like a flex, and I'm happy with it. You could be disappointed, but you're not really relying on these guys to carry your team.
Yeah, Montgomery's stat line was not looking good until overtime, basically. They just ran the ball right down the throat of the Rams in overtime. Just that drive was something to behold. And if he didn't have that, it would have been a pretty miserable stat line. But you kind of know what you're getting with David Montgomery. He's going to be very involved. And, like that, it wasn't necessarily a game that lended itself to like, where they weren't running the ball like that until, that defense was exhausted basically. And the Rams can be a little tough to run on anyway. So, yeah. We don't have to talk about the other guys. I want to, but I know we're running short on time.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, Pollard I like this week because I think the way to beat the Jets is on the ground. And then Brian Robinson, if he's going to continue to catch 3 passes, he's going to be start-worthy because he's going to have touchdown opportunities. Although, if you look at the box score, you think, oh, my God, Brian Robinson is the workhorse. It wasn't the case. He played 56% of the snaps, and Eckler played basically the rest of them. So it was more of a split than the box score showed. Benching until further notice. I'm benching these guys until something changes. It's Javonte Williams, who we thought was going to be like the early downs guy, and it wasn't. It was all Julian. It was Julian McLaughlin Javonte Williams is basically like Samaje Perine last year, which was kind of crazy. So I'm benching him until I see something different. DeAndre Swift, I don't really know what the Bears are doing in terms of their running back. They were in I know they were trailing a little bit, but they could have run the ball a little bit more. Swift had 10 carries and no catches. Probably benching him until I see something. Jalen Warren until they kind of figure out that hamstring. And, I want to see him play. He hardly played. I think Cordell Patterson had more touches than him. Julio McLaughlin, kind of for the same reasons as Javonte. Chuba Hubbard got out-snapped by Miles Sanders, and Rico Dowdle don't want to start until maybe ever. I don't know. But any of those you disagree with? If you had to start one of these guys, who you choosing to start?
Probably Javonte is who I would start. Swift and Hubbard have kind of the same problem where it's this offense. I think Jalen Warren will get more involved once he starts getting a little more healed up. Rico Dowdle, if you bet on him to be the dude there, which he still could be, it's only one game, but it's just kind of you might have lost that bet, but fortunately it only costs you your 9th round pick or something. So not completely devastating there. You got to shoot your shot. So yeah, I'm fine with sticking all these guys on the bench for now. You know what? Honestly, I'll change my answer to I'd probably start Swift, especially if the 2 other receivers on the Bears miss. If Keenan misses and Odunze, then I'll start Swift because they know he can catch the ball. Well, hopefully they've watched some of his tape before. And maybe he'll get a little more involved in that offense, and hopefully the offense will do a little better. They're going to have to throw to try and keep up with Houston. And it could just be the Tennessee defense was just really good at shutting them down. So, 1 week does not make the season, but I'll go with Swift, I guess.
Okay. I'd probably do the same. Next one's touchdown or bust. You're going to look at the box score. Some games they got 15 carries or whatever, but they're not efficient. They need a touchdown I think they're not going to catch the ball. They're not super efficient. You're banking on a touchdown. It's Zeke, it's Gus Edwards, and Zamir White. Man, his usage was scary. He was splitting early downs with Madison and then doing nothing on 3rd down and 2-minute drills. So I generally don't want to start these guys. That's kind of where I'm going with it. These are bye week desperation plays, in my opinion. So, anything there with those guys, you think?
No, not really. Zeke's going to start slowing down after, week 4 or something. So maybe that will be the time for Dowdle, but because he's old. Zeke's old. Yeah. Gus Edwards. Yeah. It's just typical Gus Edwards, at least he's on a run heavy team, who's playing the Panthers this week, like we mentioned before. And I think he's going to see a lot of usage, but again, if he doesn't get the touchdown, you're kind of SOL there, 11 for 26 is not going to get it done.
Yeah, for sure. Then clear backup. It's guys that maybe we thought were going to be a little bit more than backups, but they're really not after week 1. It's Chase Brown, Charbonnet, who we already talked about. If Walker's injured, we'll move him up. And then Ty Chandler only played 35% of the snaps. So these guys, still hold on to them, but they're backups. And that's how you should be viewing them. PPR guys, right now it's Austin Eckler and Tajay Spears. I know we were excited about Spears being kind of the 1B to Pollard, but they didn't really use him that way. And he only had 8 touches. He did play in 45% of the snaps, but, it was clearly Pollard. They want to be the guy. So, those are PPR guys. Eckler, I think, is still a sneaky PPR player. I think they're going to run the ball a little bit more than they did, so he'll get more than 2 carries. But if he's going to get 4 catches in 50 yards, and some more carries, he's going to be PPR start worthy in deeper leagues. And then my sneaky tier again is just watch these guys and Bucky Irving, Tank Bigsby, backups that looked really good and got a little bit more run than we were expecting last week. Justice Hill caught 6 passes, so just watch out for that. I don't think that's going to happen. Manuel Wilson could get a little bit more of an expanded role. He looked good in those limited touches he had. Maybe they use him a little bit more, especially Jacobs. I know you had a question questionable tag next to him. So maybe they use him more like A.J. Dillon. And then Samaje Perine, he had 2 targets in like 15% of the snaps that he played. He could become the next Jerick McKinnon. So any of those last 3 tiers you want to touch on, or do you want to just help me out with Dobbins and Moss?
No, I think you nailed it. All those guys are great stashes. They have like probably pretty decent upside. Well, if the guy in front of him goes down, maybe not Justice Hill. That's probably definitely the scariest one. Like, yeah, I don't know. I don't have to rehash everything you said. Like, I totally agree. Dobbins, and Moss. I think Dobbins is
real quick. It's Dobbins. He had 10 carries, 130 yards. So like amazing, right? Everyone's going to start him, but he had 2 big runs. Gus Edwards was still very much involved in this game. Just giving you the quick splits. They basically split early down stuff. Gus Edwards was the goal line guy. J.K. Dobbins was the third down guy. So where do I put him? Do I put him in 15 touch? Is that where he kind of belongs potentially? I know he didn't quite get there, but he almost did. I think he had like 13. Does he belong there? Does he belong somewhere else? Touchdown or bust? Like, where does he belong?
Yeah, I mean, if I guess like I'd like to see one more game of like you said, like it was basically, well, I don't know if you actually said the percentages, but it was a 60-40 split favoring Dobbins. Like we've seen more in bursts from him, like throughout the years. Health is always the issue, and he's healthy right now, so that's good. Gus is kind of old reliable, like he is that bus that just keeps churning along. So yeah, I think if we see another game of Dobbins kind of in that same capacity, that 60-40 split, then I think he kind of moves up into that 15 touch guy with 2+ catch category. So I kind of like that.
But my only issue is, if he's not going to be the goal line guy and he's going to be the third down guy in a team that's generally not going to throw much to the running backs, like there could be some bad games. But Moss is interesting. Like he's not quite like the workhorse because I think he fell below 65%, but he was like the main guy. It was basically him and Chase Brown kind of almost split early down stuff, but then Zach Moss had everything else. He had the goal line, the short yardage, the third down, the 2-minute drill, and then they essentially split early down stuff. So, like, is he just kind of in his own tier? Is he a 15+ touch guy? Is he a one more week guy? I think you're starting him because he had a pretty good week in terms of raw fantasy numbers, like 60 yards, a touchdown, 2 catches you'll take from Zach Moss. So, yeah, tell me where I should put him.
Yeah, he doesn't really fit into any one categories super well. Like, I think you are kind of starting him just given the workload, and hopefully that Bengals team starts looking less anemic. Like I think they're going to have to throw to try and keep up with Kansas City. But I don't know, man. Like it's not like they were winning the New England game because they didn't.
But that game was close too. Like and they just didn't really run the ball that much.
Yeah, you would just think there'd be a little bit more involvement, especially without Higgins playing. So I don't know. Like the Bengals always start kind of shitty in general, but usually that's due to like injuries, and it was kind of similar here without Higgins. So I think he might be better. That Zach Moss might be better once Higgins comes back. To kind of respect the pass game a little bit more. But I don't think that's happening this week.
I put him in his own tier, the Zach Moss tier. I'm just like, I want to start him, but I don't really want to put him anywhere else right now. So, I think that's fair. We'll see if he can fit somewhere else. But I guess that's it, unless you wanted to throw anything out with quarterback, tight end. I know we're not, you're still starting most of the guys you entered the season with, but we can kind of maybe touch on it more as we start getting into bye weeks and stuff. Anything else you want to throw out there?
Hopefully you picked up Colby Parkinson over Isaiah Likely, I guess. I don't know if I believe the Likely thing, not that I think he's a bad player, and they could, he could be very involved. It's a very depleted wide receiver room in Baltimore, so there's no reason why he can't be out there. But I think Colby Parkinson was the tight end pickup of the week. And I told my wife to do it a couple of times, but she doesn't listen to me.
No, I
So,
like that.
yeah. Quarterbacks, I didn't really prepare anything. So let's
Justin
say,
Fields, he's QB 16. He's going to run the ball for 100 yards.
start Joe Burrow.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But I mean, we'll get into more of that stuff when bye weeks happen. So that's our rankings for week 2. We will be back with all of our other videos out there. So appreciate everyone watching, and we will see you guys in the next video.